Welcome to the Naked Peaches. I'm Anna.
I'm Taylor.
I'm Coyote.
Yay!
Yay.
We're so excited to have Coyote here. We have been dreaming of this day for a long time. And it's finally here.
Oh, jeez.
No pressure.
No, we just love you. And we love working with you. We've done 2 shoots together now, and they were both amazing, incredible experiences.
They're iconic shoots.
Yeah, they really are. I mean,
I'm in love with all of them, so, but I'm biased. I get to look at me.
I don't know, that picture you posted yesterday, the one with your hands in your mouth.
With the latex glove.
Yeah. Literally, every time I see it, I just, like, want to cry of happiness.
Also,
it's so good.
The one on the fridge from, like, below is...
That's upcoming. I can't wait for the one where I'm, like, in the big... Like, I feel like I'm in my divorcee era, you know? Where, like, I've got this big, long, flowy robe, and, like, my hair's all done, my makeup looks flawless thanks to Victoria, and I'm just, like, that's, like, it's coming, and I can't wait to post it.
All right, we should give the people our outline of what we're discussing today, since we heard that that's what they love.
Yes. Okay, so if you've seen the photos we posted with Coyote, if you've, like, you know, maybe creeped on her Instagram, you know that Coyote does rope, is very, like, in the world of kink, is iconic, legendary for her rope photo shoots. Oh, so we're talking about, like, rope today. We're talking about kink. We're also talking about your work as a social worker, advocate for sex workers, and just, like, so many good things. I'm just, like, so excited to get into it.
Oh my goodness. Yay.
And I feel like some of the questions that we are asking Coyote today are questions that, like, have come up in previous episodes where we've talked about other types of kink, non-monogamy, things like that. So I'm just, like, I feel like we're getting into it, you know? When we met at your shoot for the first time, I was like, wait, is this the first time we're meeting?
Because it didn't feel like that at all. Yeah, I can't remember who exactly introduced us either.
No, like, I feel like we just, you know, we're both sober, so we're in this world of sober people, and it's, like, kind of a small community.
Especially in Portland, like, super close-knit. Everyone knows everyone.
Yeah, and I feel like I've just known who you were, but, like, there's never, like, I don't know. Like, I feel like we have crossed paths before, but I don't know for sure.
And I knew
when.
I was at a friend Alex and Chris's wedding, and I saw Nicole's husband wearing a hoodie with Nicole's butt on it. And I was like, I know who took that photo. Yes! But we hadn't met by that point. I just, like, knew who you were. And I was like, that's sick.
Yeah.
And he was like, that's my wife. And I was like, I know, dude. I am aware.
Okay, shout out to Nicole for, like, all the TikToks that she made of, like, that whole experience.
So
I love her.
Nicole is a legendary queen. Also, he had that, and then after, like, their wedding and everything, she came back because he wanted another, like, t-shirt of her, like, it was, like, her face and her veil and everything, and so
their love is, like, goals for sure, 100%. Yeah. They're both so obsessed with each other in the sweetest of ways, and,
they're so cute.
I love that.
Mind-blowing.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So cute. But yeah, we just, like, I feel like we just, like, kind of sort of knew of each other from being in this community and, like, you know, admired each other from afar.
And Anne Pine had
Instagram.
Done a shoot with you prior. The queen herself, like, living her best life.
Yes.
And so I'd seen photos that you've done of, like, her and Nicole and was like, that's a shoot that I want to be in.
Yeah. And then at some point we started talking and you were like, I would love to do a shoot. And we were like, I feel like we really, like, we could not make it happen at first.
No,
because
it was hard
you
with
went to
scheduling.
Europe.
I traveled. I went to Europe. I was in California all the time. I went back to the East Coast, and it was just like,
it was like iffy there for a minute if we were going to be able to make it happen. But then we did, and it was like, oh my God.
We were like, we're going to be together for 3 hours and turn into 6. We were just like, we can't stop. It was like outfit change after outfit change, like going from location. Yeah.
It was light when you got there, and it was dark by the time you left.
Yeah. Well, and those photos were so pretty because you guys got that, like, sunset golden hour,
like actually got to go on the balcony too, which was really rad.
Yeah.
With Taylor, like, leaning out of a window doing one of her, like, I'm, you know, Krama-guying and parkouring over everything to get the perfect shot.
My favorite thing to do.
Anything for the shot.
Anything. And you were also one of the first people to, like, be on the swing when we got the swing in the studio, and it was, like, obviously iconic to have you on the swing because, like, you're, like, busting out these poses where she's literally, like, bending herself in half, like, just like
a little scorpion, like, hanging off the swing. Like.
It's so much easier on a swing than it was in rope. I've done the same pose in other spots, and I was like, this is great. It's so cozy.
You made them look very easy, and two people that do posing tutorials on the swing all the time, and it's not always that easy.
Yeah, we've tried to do some posing recreations from Coyote's first shoot, and we did not look the same.
No.
Gotta have the right
one
momentum.
where you're just like dangling off of it in this way that like you just make it look so like effortless, but I feel like if I was to try that, it would look like I was like breaking my back or something. Like
it hurts, man. It's struggle stuff. I do a lot of stretching to be able to move my body like that.
Yeah.
100%. But
do you stretch every day?
I do stretch every day.
Yeah.
I try to at least do like 15 or 20 minutes every morning.
So
wow.
smart.
Yeah.
That's goals.
And then I go to the gym 4 days a week. So.
And are you mostly weightlifting at the gym?
Powerlifting for the most part, yeah. Because I want to keep my dump truck ass done like well into my 80s. Like
Yes.
that's what I want to be known for. It's like I want to be like GILF status already.
GILF,
Like
I
I'm
love
ready.
that.
I'm so ready for like gray hairs and like, you know, just like the white streak in front. And I think that's really where I'm going to like feel like you have your glove era and like your pink and like GILF is going to be for me.
Yes,
I
that's when you'll come
love
into your
this.
full
Yeah,
power.
that's like really where I'm going to own. It's not my Saturn return. It's like my ending.
I'm gonna channel this. I feel like as I age, I just need to remind myself of that. Like anytime I'm feeling older, I see like a new gray hair or a new wrinkle, I'm gonna be like, no, I'm just building towards my GILF era.
100%. Like think of Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin. Like that's what I want to be. Like so comfortable in my own skin and like just owning every wrinkle.
I love this. I love this so much. I'm like also in an era right now where I'm trying to like embrace, or not embrace, I guess the opposite of embrace, diet culture and like all these like sort of ingrained like issues I have with food and like just be like, okay, yeah, I've gained weight because I quit vaping and that's okay. And
100%.
I don't need to control it or fix it. And I feel like it's along the same vein of like just like radically accepting ourselves and like loving it for what it is.
And it all fluctuates, right? Like my comfort with my body today was not the comfort I had even like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Definitely not 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And like, you know, bodies change and fluctuate. Like you just had a baby and like your feet get bigger, like your boobs get bigger, things drop and change all the time. And like
boobs definitely get bigger.
she's like, go yay. Yeah, awesome. And like same with my body. And especially like with kink stuff, like kink is primarily made up, like the popular kink models that you see are much tinier than me, are much more alabaster skin, like have tattoos, but maybe spend a ton more money than I've ever had on tattoos and went for it. And like my body type is not what you think of when you think of kink models. And so...
But you're so hot.
And that's what I keep telling everybody, you know? And that's what I love when people tell me. And I think that now, but like when I first started getting into it, I thought I was in the wrong place. Like I did not think that I was going to be able to do the things that I now do today. There was a lot of denied access to being able to like have resources or sharing or people who wanted to work with me because I wasn't their style. And
I will fight those people. Is it like sort of like, I'm envisioning like sort of the Suicide Girls look.
Yeah.
When you're talking about like the ideal sort of kink body. Yeah.
Very much so. And like I am 200 pounds. I am very thick. Like I have like a ton of mismatched tattoo work.
Thick.
I'm
Okay.
dummy thick. And like, just a different body style than like normally is in, especially the rope world where to be a rope bunny, as the phrase is, like most are very small bodied, high femme people.
And you don't like the term rope bunny.
I personally don't use the term rope bunny.
Yeah.
I think that for myself, it always felt kind of condescending. It felt like I was like something was being done to me when like rope takes a lot of effort and a lot of work on a bottom. Like you have to have, in my opinion, to be a good rope bottom, like you have to have a ton of training. Like you're educating yourself on the ties. You have to educate yourself on communicating your needs to people. Like it's not I'm laying back and being a pillow princess. Like I am actively working in this space the same way that a top is, just differently.
And you're like, you know, you're stretching every day. You're working out. Like you're like physically very like fit and like you're like
and I
strong.
do a lot of workouts and a lot of stretching in order to be able to maintain poses that a lot of people can't do, or a lot of people historically with my body type would not have done because people wouldn't have done it with us. And so, I like to push those boundaries a bit.
I love that.
I love that too. I also love that, like, because I know so little about this, like, your page is really my first, like, forte into even seeing, like, rope stuff. And so you, like, saying that, I'm like, oh, I feel like when I think of rope, I just think of you. And it's
Literally,
like you're the only person I associate with it in my mind. So I'm like,
awesome.
I'm like, oh, it's just, it's Coyote. That's the face of rope in my world.
100%.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. I mean, I'll take it. I'll be the face of rope. I'm 100% down.
Your second shoot is when we actually did rope stuff in the studio.
Yes.
And watching you just be in those poses, and I don't even know what I was expecting before we came in there, but it is like, it looked so painful, number one. Number two, like, just the amount of flexibility and what looked like just, like, mental ability to just, like, calm yourself down in a pose where you're, like, clearly it hurts, and it's, like, and then you're just being suspended by your, like, body. I don't know.
Yeah.
It looked really painful. I was like, you have to train to do this. There's no way you can just, like, oh, tie me up, here you go.
And people definitely don't put effort into, like, educating themselves on, like, how rope works on your body, how to communicate with other people, like, and that's how injuries happen, right? Like, they put themselves in situations where they've consented to the act happening, but not the result that's going to happen. And people get hurt. They push their bodies in different ways. I've definitely had experiences where I've had a top who was not used to tying someone of my body type, and I got injured because they, like, were not confident in the pose, and it resulted in me having an injury. And I've also had really amazing experiences with people who were more educated than I was and have taught me so much about what my body's capabilities were, and, like, challenged me to really put myself in positions that I didn't think I had access to because of my body type. And then they smashed those ideals out, right? Like, they built me, like, more of a strength and foundation with, like, confidence. Because everybody deserves to be in rope. Fat bodies, disabled bodies, for everybody.
I love that. And I feel like those experiences where you do something that you didn't think you could do.
Yeah.
Like, when I look back on everything I've done in my life, those are my favorite experiences.
100%.
You know? They're the most memorable things.
Yeah.
So
I remember, like, my this is, like, a rope pose that's, like, really tricky, but, like, I remember the first time. It's called a TK, and you have your arms behind your back, and they are crossed behind you, and I suspended just from that with no leg support, and I was so proud. I also, like, have the ability where I can put what's called a waistline, which is just a single wrap around my waist, and I can suspend from that comfortably and know how my body can handle that. And these are things that when I first started in my rope journey, where I was doing only floor work, which is just ties on the floor without suspension, like, I would have never seen myself having the growth, like, emotionally or physically to be able to hold something like that. And thankfully, because I've had some really amazing rope people in my life, I was able to achieve some goals in rope that I, like, am super stoked on. And I feel like a fucking badass.
you are.
You are a badass. Yeah.
I definitely see you that way. I mean, okay, so can you take us a little bit through your rope journey, like, from kind of how you got started to, like, where you are now? I mean, I know, like, we've talked about this a little bit, but, like, you know, for the people.
Yeah, absolutely. So it also actually coincides with my sober story. They go really hand in hand.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I got sober in Washington, D.C., which in the 2000s had, like, a huge influx of dungeons and kink share spaces and places in, like, Madam's Organs and DuPont Circle that just, like, attracted a lot of kinky people to come and, like, cultivate different relationships. And so when I first got sober, which I don't recommend for any sober people, but, like, I met a boy at, like, 3 months sober.
Classic.
Who was,
Tale as old as time.
as it does. And, like, I mean, it kept me coming to the rooms, you know?
Yeah.
I was definitely motivated to be around. And he was older than I was and was involved in kink and was a dom. And so that meant that he was super... he was, like, had big top energy. He was really handsome. He worked in finance, which there are a ton of people in kink who happen to work in finance or, like, legal spaces. 100%.
Yeah. Checks out.
And I remember he showed up to a meeting in a big, like, nice suit that he had come from work, and we hooked up, like, 2 days later. And the second he took that suit off, it was just, like, all of these crazy tattoos. And I was like, I am in love with this human. And they were really involved in kink. And so he worked in a dungeon and, like, had partial ownership of a dungeon in DC. And we began a relationship with each other. And I had I'd had rough sex. I'd had kinkier sex, you know, like, I'd done things that put me, like, not at a vanilla level. But when I met this person, I was introduced to, like, a whole new world of what it actually meant to be in kink. And so I started volunteering at this dungeon as a pro sub for spaces, which meant that people could utilize me as a bottom for a variety of different scenes, whether it be impact, needle play, and also rope. And so for me, like, there was a ton of classes in the DC area that taught me about different rope styles, both Western and Eastern styles. People would come in for what are called intensives, which are, like, weekend-long classes where you get to learn about rope. And this human was not the best representation, in my opinion, of sober or kinky spaces, but, like, did segue me into being introduced to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's wild. I didn't know. What year did you get sober?
2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're 2 years apart. I got sober in 2008.
Amazing.
Yeah. Sobriety sisters.
Fuck yeah. I got sober in 2008 originally and then relapsed and then came back in 2010.
Well, I'm glad you came back.
Thank you.
That's so interesting. It's like, it sort of reminds me of like, I feel like you know someone who has a similar story to this, but what's the stupid movie, 50 Shades of Grey?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like this like stereotypical guy with a suit who sweeps you off your feet.
Yeah. There's just something about a guy in a double-breasted blazer, and you're just like, oof. And I remember he had this tattoo, and they were all like very discreet, right? But he had this huge like kind of like mandala style like stippling piece that went all down his chest, and it like pinpointed to point towards his junk, and I was just like, this is the sexiest man I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, and like that was like my first example of not only kink but also like really unhealthy kink.
What was unhealthy?
Yeah, what's
about
unhealthy?
it?
Well, I was newly sober, which this person knew, and so like that meant that like I had very low levels of emotional regulation. I really struggled to communicate my needs. I did a lot of things out of pleasing another person instead of finding what I wanted and like what I identified for. And like that, I was a lot of limits that at the time I said I was okay with. I was really saying because I had a lot of affection for this person and wanted their acceptance and wanted their care. And I felt like by doing certain things, I would get that.
Totally. That makes sense.
And so putting myself into like kink scenes that like I was not educated on or was not prepared to be able to consent to an extent. Yeah, I didn't like have the best introduction on like what a healthy dynamic with a dom or a top was. Because I was 19 years old, I was in a very vulnerable place, and like this person set me up for what would later be success in kink, but also through a lot of trial and error on learning about like what I didn't want, who I didn't want to be, and like what I wasn't willing to like compromise other people, like for other people to do to me.
Yeah, yeah. That's so interesting that you say that, like about the vulnerability, like that being kind of complicated to like untie from being like a sub, because I feel like I'm like pretty vanilla, but I do feel like I lean towards being like more submissive. Mm-hmm. And but I always wonder, like, am I submissive or do I just kind of really like to please my partner, you know? Like, it's really hard to tell, like, which it is.
And they kind of go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
Like, part of the, like, origin of being submissive is, like, you get validation, you get off on pleasing other people, which is not a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. Like, today I identify as a switch. There's some partners I play with where I am the bottom, and there's some partners I play with where I'm the top, and both are really validating and really awesome for me in different places. But I also, like, don't want to say that I'm comfortable with something just to make someone else happy. Like, I want to know that at the root of that is like this, I'm doing this for me. Yeah.
So like in general, would you say like someone who is like really experienced in kink, who is a top or a dom, like sort of seeking out someone who's like really young, vulnerable, like that, is that a red flag?
That is a huge red flag.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's unfortunately really common.
I was just going to say, that story I feel like is so common.
Yeah. Like you get a bunch of people, and I'll speak like mostly about the rope community, but like you will have like tops who I will generalize, and this is like my experience, so like don't come at me internet, but like there are a ton of like middle-aged white cis male tops who go specifically for that 20-year-old, young 20s, new to the kink scene, very small bodied, like idealistic rope bunny or like person, and they will like show them the world of kink. But through that, like though there are experiences where that happens and like there is not like a ageist barrier happening, like there are great relationships that can come from it, but there are so many times where like a rope top will use their status of like, there is a power dynamic at play between tops and bottoms. There's definitely a like social power dynamic at play where if someone's in the scene longer, you want to shoot with them, you want to do rope with them, they're like super cool, maybe they've led a class, like whatever it has, and they utilize that to their advantage in order to recruit people for rope or sex or play, and that normally would not sleep with them if they weren't a rope top.
So what's like a safer, like healthier way for someone to get into it?
Oh geez.
Well, or do you just have to go through like that?
I really don't want people to have to go through it. I think that like in the last like 10 years especially, there's been this really amazing like community of bottoms all over the country and probably the world, but just speaking like nationally, like that communicate really well for each other and will look out for each other in ways that we didn't before. I think that a lot of bottoms will just like keep an eye out at different events to see who's talking to who. I think that they will do their best to like educate other bottoms and like invite them into spaces with them in order to learn how to bottom, to educate them on we have like, we call it vetting, right? Where like we will speak to each other about different rope tops. Like I try my best to talk to rope tops, rope bottoms about people if I'm interested in playing with someone new or tying with someone new and get their opinion, which is super, super based on bias 100%, but like also comes from places like the origin is like somewhere where, you know, you will learn like, hey, I've tied with that person, had a really positive experience. It was really safe. They listened to my needs. Or that person is someone who really wanted to sleep with me the whole time. I felt like it was all about like that and not about rope. They pushed me into poses I wasn't comfortable with. And that's like, communication is like my biggest and number one thing in kink, is like talking to those around you and those in your community is super, super helpful.
Okay.
I've also had experiences where I've vetted someone and like gotten good feedback. And then like I've had an experience with them that did not match that. And it was, and like I've gotten like burned or hurt or sad, you know?
Okay, so wait, so I want to go back. So you're doing this now with this guy, you're like getting into it. So I guess, were you guys together for a long time, or did you eventually just like leave that relationship and like keep like exploring things without him?
That's a good question. We dated for like a year, 18 months probably.
Okay.
And like they were not the only partner that I was seeing, like that, and this was also my first experience with poly. They had really introduced it to me, which I realize now was more so they could sleep with whoever they wanted to sleep with, you know? So once again, not the most healthy representation, but did afford me the opportunity to like build relationships with other kind, caring, and loving people. And we did not have a good ending. I had like started implementing boundaries for myself that they were very much not in like support of, as like any good old controlling narcissist would love to do. And we parted ways. And I have not talked to that person for quite a number of years.
It's funny because I feel like this is so like similar to a lot of stories I've heard from like people in the recovery community.
Yeah.
It's like a very similar type of thing where like there's definitely like a sort of type of person, oftentimes like middle-aged cis white men who like, you know, will have
middle-aged cis white men.
Just classic. They're out here fucking everything up.
Yeah.
They'll like have a lot of like recovery time or sobriety time and like, you know, kind of establish themselves as like gurus almost, and then like prey on like young 20-something women who like come in and get sober, and it's a fucking tale as old as time.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's going to happen with like any mini community, right? Like when you put all of us together in a small space, like people's defects of character are going to come up, they're going to crop out, and like you're going to see like different sides, and like the first version of someone is not usually the most authentic.
Yeah. And that is why like having a community and talking to people, because I mean, I remember like when I first got sober, like the girlies were looking out for me, and they were like, that guy dates every single girl who walks through that door, you know, like stay the fuck away from him.
Yeah. And like, thank God for the like bottoms who have like really put their like stepped out of their comfort zone. Like there's this old thing, especially in the recovery community, of like not getting involved in other people's drama. And the same thing goes in the kink community, where it's like, oh, like they'll figure it out, or like, oh, it's not my business, like yada yada. And like pushing back and challenging that old narrative is so important to make sure that like there's a safe space.
When you were talking about how there are all these like this big dungeon scene in DC.
Yes.
Are there places like that in Portland?
There are a couple different places. We have a bunch of different like sex clubs that also do classes, and they have like kink specific nights. So there's Sanctuary, Pravada, and the Velvet Rope are like the three biggies. And then a really good private dungeon for rentals, which is also really great for shoots, is called Sub Rosa. And that's a really cool spot where, it's owned by a bunch of femdoms, and they have like all the equipment that you could ever want for any type of like kinky scene. They have like a 4-post bed with different hard points on it. They have hard points from the ceiling. They have like velvet couches, a cage, a standing cage, a sex swing that's like all leather and like an industrial sex swing, you know, like it is meant for power stuff. Yeah. And so sex workers can take clients there. People can book it for photo shoots. I just did a photo shoot there recently with a friend of mine. So
wow, love these. Stay tuned for our photo shoot.
I know.
Okay, interesting. I knew the only one of those that I've heard of is the Velvet Rope and Pravada, which I feel like is very like everybody kind of has heard of those places.
Yeah, and the Velvet Rope I feel like caters more to like swingers. Pravada used to do a lot more kink nights before the pandemic happened, and Sanctuary I think is like the one that's really designated as like a kinkier space. They have a couple different event nights each month, one called Spanctuary at Sanctuary, which is like an impact night. They have Jiffy Kink, which is kind of like a speed dating night for people in kink to meet other kinky people.
Oh, that's cool.
Those are run by Mistress Bliss and Ron Swanson Rope, and both of them work really well together to just coordinate a bunch of really cool events.
We love Ron Swanson Rope.
Yeah, big fan.
Big fan.
Love.
Big fan of Father Daddy.
Father Daddy.
Okay, that's amazing. And then, okay, so I feel like you should ask your question.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So we're dying to know.
Yeah, we're dying to know. So, okay, because we're so vanilla and we don't know anything, when people get into, like, rope, is it something where it's like you can do rope just to do rope and enjoy that, or is it always rope and sex together?
It's super varies per person, and I think it's kind of both. Like, people look at rope and are like, this is hot, right? Like, you are moving someone's body in a really cool way. They are contorted. They are bound. Like, there is like this, it's a beautiful fucking piece of art every time you see someone tied up. And with that comes like the desire of that. Like, I either want to be that person that's tied, or I want to be the one who's in control of the person who's tied. And so for me, like, I have tied with so many fucking people across the world, and I have only slept with like a couple rope tops in that journey. I think that it's such an intimate and vulnerable space already. Like, you are trusting someone with your body and like trusting them to hear your communication and vice versa. And so that is already such a deep level of intimacy that like fucking them for me is not like my goal. But I have a couple friends that like I do sleep with, both in and out of rope, and like that's part of our relationship. But if you were to look at my Instagram, out of the 100 photos, 200 photos in the last like 6 months that I posted on this one in rope, I've only slept with one of those rope tops. And they're just my homie. And like, that's just something that like in our relationship, we're like, okay, we're friends, we tie, and sometimes we occasionally like get each other off, which is like super fun. But I'm also not dating that person at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Do you feel like that's like more common, like for people to kind of keep
I
it
feel like
separate?
it is. Like,
Okay.
I definitely have had relationships with rope tops before. I think it gets a little convoluted. I don't have necessarily the commitment level that I did when I was younger, when I was being in a dungeon space consistently and in a 24/7 dynamic. I've got full-time work, full-time school, full-time partner relationships as a polyamorous person. I also do volunteer work in Portland, and I do kink. And so like adding like another component or like layer to the onion of a relationship can be really challenging for me. And I don't ever want to set someone up for failure where like I've committed to being able to do something that I just don't have capacity for.
Yeah, she's booked and busy.
Yeah. Just like so booked, so busy. Never not tired. My constant state of being.
Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, it's cool that I get the opportunity, like when I have found people that I've had like intimate relationships with it, like sexually in addition to rope. It's really awesome to be able to combine those two spaces. Also, like the whole time we're not always fucking in rope either. Like I also like have vanilla sex and think it's super fun. Like, there's no, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but also sometimes maybe I'm like hanging from the ceiling and like have bamboo holding my legs apart.
See, that's hot.
Yeah, that
Yeah, and who doesn't want that, you
Yeah.
know?
I love that. Okay, that's another thing that I was like super curious to ask you about, because I feel like non-monogamy is like has been a running theme of like our podcast. Like we keep it like talking to people who are like they're non-monogamous, they've experienced it, or like I don't know, I just feel like the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, is everybody non-monogamous?
Okay, yeah, I feel like nobody is in like a monogamous relationship except for me.
Yeah. Yeah, we're like just like old-fashioned over here.
Yeah, you're right.
But I feel like I've talked to a lot of people who are not poly, they're like ethically non-monogamous or like some other version of that, and I'm like, I'm so intrigued by being poly because it just seems like so much like more like you're so busy and you're like you're also having these like more emotional relationships with people. It's not just sex, and like I'm so curious about like how that works and how that like fits into your life.
It's definitely like a struggle, right? Like, and like I, off the bat, when I hear the phrase like ethically non-monogamous, like I hate that phrase. I'll
Really?
be very transparent. And the
Okay,
reason
why?
for
Yeah,
that
tell us.
is because like you're either monogamous or non-monogamous. Like and when I say that, I mean that like non-monogamy is I have consented with my partner to explore other options outside of our relationships. And by saying ethically non-monogamous, you're implying that there's a non-ethically way to be non-monogamous, which is just cheating.
That's a good point.
And so like
Yeah.
you're just a fucking cheater at that point.
Yeah.
And you can cheat in polyamorous relationships. Like I mean, obviously everyone has their own dynamics, but like you have boundaries and restrictions and trust areas in your relationship that can be violated by a partner, and you can still cheat on someone in poly. And so, yeah, the ethically non-monogamous as like a term like just irks me because I'm just like, why do we have to add another word to like make it seem more accessible or more digestible for people who are not non-monogamous?
Yeah. Well, and also I feel like it adds like kind of a layer of judgment too.
Yeah, it does. 100%. And I think that like, I don't know, I have been poly for a long time. I've also been in really happy, successful monogamous relationships where I have been fully satiated in those and like not needed or wanted to have outside experiences. I have come to terms with the fact that like my reliance on one singular person to get my needs met puts a lot of pressure on them and a lot of expectations that I'll have on myself. And I just have found that like that is inequitable and acts like a level of unfairness for both parties. And so as like someone who's super busy, or even when I'm not super busy, like I want to know that like I have multiple people I can reach out to for different needs to be met, because it's a lot of weight to carry another human with that reliance level being so high. And so it's really amazing. Also, like different needs get met by different partners. Like I have a partner right now who I love emotionally and we are super in sync that way. And like our sex life is not necessarily where I would want it to be, but it's growing. So I have a partner who I like am really strength-based and have a foundation of like our sex life is phenomenal. And I get to utilize them for like my nerdier aspects of my life. Like I love to game. I love to be able to like read fantasy novels until 4 a.m. In order to like calm my brain down.
Same.
And like there's 100% Sarah Moss forever. And like that's someone like I can share that with. And it just like I feel as if it just means that I have my own level of independence and don't set myself up for failure by committing to people in ways that I'm not able to show up for them. I don't want to ever be in a relationship where I'm half-assing 6 relationships when I could be full-assing 3, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's such an interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
Like because you're setting different sort of expectations for the relationship, you are full-assing it with these people. Because you're like, okay, this is like what we do together is we like nerd out on these things, and like we have really good sex, and what we do together is we have like really deep conversation, and you know like that's,
and it doesn't mean that those can't ebb and flow or fluctuate or grow in different ways, but it does mean that everyone gets the opportunity to explore relationships that can match them where they're at and like provide them with needs that maybe aren't being met or can't be met by another person.
Yeah.
Have you done a lot of therapy?
I have.
I feel like
So much therapy.
I feel like there's just like so much, like there's like a level of self-awareness and like
I actually won't date or sleep with someone who's not actively in therapy.
that's like such a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, it works great for me. And all of my best friends, like all of my closest friends are all social workers. It's just like a really, I've just identified that like these are like my people. There's a communication level. Like I am embarrassingly almost to a fault honest with folks about like where I'm at. And I need people in my life who can hold that space for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And vice versa.
I love that. And I feel like that's like such a important thing to identify for yourself, because like to be that way and then like be having relationships with people who are just like not emotionally like there is really hard.
And I can't always like I think there's something to be said in relationships for being able to meet someone where they're at, right? And whether that's good or struggling and they're going through a lot of challenges, like that's part of what a committed relationship looks like, is navigating ups and downs. I also think that like people who are consistently in downs or consistently struggling with their communication, with their boundaries, with their accessibility to themselves and to others, like is not an attractive place for me anymore. And like I want folks in my life who are willing to challenge each other and have hard conversations and navigate through discomfort. And if you can't even do that, I struggle to like really present myself in a vulnerable place with you. Mm-hmm. When I first got sober, the people I was attracted to were the most chaotic, right?
Of
like
course.
That was Like, I give me all of the chaos and the drama, and like I want the like hot and heavy, passionate NRE that happens. But then I got older and I was like, that is exhausting.
Yeah.
I am once again perpetually tired. And like, and it just like caused myself a lot of pain, and I also caused other people a lot of harm. Like, if I put myself into too many relationships, right? Or if I am stretching myself so thin in too many partnerships, I'm not able to provide the needs that my partners are asking from me. And that's, I don't want to be the person that overcommits themselves and really doesn't show up when I've made the commitment to show up.
It's like, I haven't juggled like multiple partners before, but it almost reminds me of just like having like friends in your life. Of like, you know, like I tend not to have a ton of like acquaintances, but I have people in my life that I'm like really close to, and I like try to invest in those relationships because I just feel like I like literally can't, like, I don't have the time for like acquaintances or other things. But like, it's like that too, where, you know, you have some friends that you go to for certain things or certain conversations or whatever it might be, and it's like, that's like the beauty of having multiple like really close people in your life is, you know, you're not having to just focus on like one person and one thing.
And it's so liberating to get to the point with your relationships where you are so vulnerable with them, and they get to see all the different facets of you. Like, they get to hold space for you when you're struggling. You get to do the same for them. They celebrate the joys that come into your life and like challenge you to continue to grow who you want to be, and who they also observe like who you have a capacity to be. And like, if I do that with too many people, like, I'm not getting my needs met, neither are they. Mm-hmm. And it's super important, especially once I got into my 30s. Like, I want really intentional relationships, and I love the word investing. Like, I want to invest in relationships and have people who want to invest in me.
When I was okay, I want to see if you guys can relate to this. When I was like younger, in my 20s, I was like the queen of needing to have like one best friend that was like my everything. Yeah. Like, all day long we were texting, updating each other, every single thing that was going on. Like, needed to be like so codependently overly involved in each other's lives. And like it was like very like just constantly getting in fights because you're always letting each other down because the expectations are so fucking high. And now I realize that like when I like start to sense that from somebody, I get like I get freaked out because I'm like, I don't want to go back to like having those types of relationships where it's like I need you to fulfill every single thing and like be, you know, because it's just too much to like put on someone.
And like, I 100% agree. Like, I mean, I had a friend breakup this last year that was very much like that. We were very much, like almost partners with how we navigated life together. And it was so like all day, every day, checking in with each other, getting into fights all the time because their expectations were not being met because we overextended ourselves on what we said we could do. And that's painful. Like, it's repetitively painful. You're constantly letting yourself down and letting other people down. And it becomes enmeshed in a way that just is an unhealthy and toxic relationship. And it sucks when that happens because it's not like anyone intended that. It's not a lack of love for one another. It's just we have put ourselves in a situation that we could not handle. Yeah. And that sucks. And like, my best friend, who I love so much, who's moving with me to Richmond, Riley, and I have developed communication with each other, and it just happened one day organically, and it's just become like a really big cornerstone of our relationship. Is like, they are in school full-time too. They're also a full-time special education teacher in our county, and they match a lot of like struggles with both of those things. And so I will text them if I'm having a big issue. Obviously, if there's an emergency, I can always call them, but like, I'll be like, do you have capacity for me to vent today? Do you have space for me to like unload more? Because every other aspect of their life has already been unloading and like taking care of others. And sometimes you just don't have the ability to take care of another person. Sometimes you are out of spoons, you are exhausted, and you just need to be the one who's either being the baby or being like in your own space by yourself. And I don't know why it never occurred to me before to like ask them or ask each other, you know. In my friendships, I can be like, hey, actually, I can't carry your weight today. It's not that I don't want to, it's not a lack of love. It's like, I wouldn't be able to show up for you in the way you need. And like, just like that quick check-in of like, yes or no, you got a minute, like, makes a world of difference.
Totally, yeah. I had a sponsor who told me to do that once, and it started making a really big difference in like calling people instead of just like immediately launching into like, you won't fucking believe what just happened, like what he just said to me, like just be, like first being like, do you have like the capacity to listen to like a vent, you know?
Because it goes from like, okay, I'm like sharing space and venting versus I'm holding someone emotionally hostage.
Yes.
Against their will. Yeah. They have not consented to this.
Yes. Holding someone emotionally hostage is like, it is a crime.
And I think the kink for some people to be honest. Like some people really enjoy doing that.
For sure.
I
Okay.
think there's a kink for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, I feel like, can you confirm, is there a kink for everything?
I feel like there is.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about it before we started recording, but like the My Strange Addiction.
Yes.
Like wild what some people can get into, you know?
The relationships with cars, you know, the trailer.
The trailer. She left the trailer to date the car. Okay, girl, do you?
Yeah. Okay, I actually, like, I feel like maybe I should have looked up the definition of kink before we did this episode, but like just in talking about like how common it is to like do rope and with like have rope partners that you don't have a sexual relationship with, I'm like, okay, so I have always thought kink and sex were kind of like went hand in hand. Like your kinks were kind of a part of your sexuality and your sex life. But now I'm like, okay, is it like a separate, like, is it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so like you're correlating someone's kink or fetishes, more fetishes than what I'm hearing, to sex.
Okay.
And I think that it varies.
Yeah.
I think that like there are kinks, like some people get off, and get off is a broad term, right? That doesn't mean they're necessarily like coming all over the place, but some people just like find joy through other people by like being subservient, by topping them. I have had several partners in my experience who I have never had sex with, but we've done kinky things. And it brings both of us joy. Ron Swanson Rope and I, for example, I adore that human to the ends of the earth. And like we tie with each other. They've been like mean to me, like done a little bit of impact with me before. But we've never like touched each other's genitals. But we're both getting something out of that relationship. Like I enjoy that time we have. That's different than our normal friendship, different than our work life together, and is like a kink that we both enjoy doing. Yeah. And some people, like I have friends that just want, like, will self-tie themselves up in scarves, and they're not masturbating, but they just love the feel of it, and it provides them with joy, release, desire, whatever emotion might fill them. And then other people, like, go a little bit harder into that, and, like, will see a scarf and then, like, jizz in their pants, you know? Yeah. And, like, so it just, like, depends on the person and, like, what the different fetishes they might have and how they associate that with communicating and connecting with others.
Yeah. So there really is like no one size fits all. It's not like
absolutely
this
not.
Is what it looks like and this is how many times you come. And
No, 100%. Which would be so boring if it was. Oh my God. Also, I wouldn't want to ever, especially as like a femme person, right? Like putting myself into kinky situations is higher risk. It's more likely to be taken advantage of, be considered vulnerable or like a target for other people. And so if I always had the expectation with rope that I was going to fuck someone or get fucked, like I wouldn't probably do it, because like that is like a pretty heavy weight. I've also even just like the option to not always tie with people. Like some of the rope tops that I spend time with, like I'll go over and they'll be like, hey, I'm not feeling it today, or vice versa, I'm not, and we'll do something else. Like these are relationships. I think there's especially with like social media making our content, like our rope work so public, people have this audacity, but entitlement that like they are invited to an aspect of our lives, right? Like we give them these snippets.
Totally.
And they read that as I can invite myself into more spaces with them. So the amount of people that I get messaging me who are like, oh, I'd love to meet your friends. I want to spend time with you and your rope top, like yada, 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 whatever it may be, which though flattering in a sense is like this expectancy that we're like a service provider. Which some people 100% sell their rope skills, like whether it's bottoming or topping or shooting, whatever it may be. But like for me, I am a retired sex worker. I don't do any of that anymore to like an extent, right? Like what I make on the internet today is for fun and for free with my friends. Like it is just, I am enjoying this. This is a part of my life. It is a subculture I consider myself a part of. And I am not a service provider with rope. Mm-hmm. And so when people approach me and have this expectation to like the amount of dudes that message me and be like, I want to tie you up.
It's like, yeah, I bet you do.
I say, you like, fucking do, bro. I don't know you, Chad. You know, like get out of here.
Go take
like,
a class.
It like takes away from the connections that I've built with the people that I am in relationships with, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever those relationships dynamic look like, we are investing in each other, putting forth effort, cultivating some connection. It also like is so entitled to like the art process. Like the best rope tops that I work with have spent years, thousands of hours, like tying, retying on people, off of people, themselves. Like this is years and years of training. The best bottoms are people who are putting in effort into educating themselves, attending intensives, like challenging their bodies, working with other skilled individuals. And it gets really heavy to feel like people, because, you know, social media gives that small glimpse, that they feel like they're entitled to the access to your whole world. When you're telling people that they're lucky for the work that they put into something, you're taking away from the work.
100%.
Yeah. Like, you guys didn't just like trip and fall with a Nikon in your hands and suddenly you have a boudoir studio. Like, you put in hours of cultivating a business model, of working with each other, developing relationships within your team, developing skills, attending conferences. Like, you have the business that you have today because you fucking worked for it.
Thank you.
And it shows.
People do sometimes say stuff like that, though, and I have a similar reaction where people are like, oh, you're so lucky. Like, this just doesn't even feel like work, does it? And I'm always like, it is work. It's still work. It's fun, but it's work. You know? It's just like, again, like, people, and I'm sure they mean well, but it's like, it's true. Like, you have put, I mean, just like listening to your story about like how much work and time you put into this and like, you know, how much effort you put into it. Like, I'm just like, yeah, it's not luck. Like, you've been working your ass off for years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then also like a deeper layer for me, which is me just like in my own insecurities and my own fears that still crop up for me, is like, I looked lucky compared to all of my like play partners or photographers or whoever it may have been, as like, I'm not like the fat funny friend anymore. Like, I'm not here as like an accessory. Like, I'm not here because people need me as like an opportunity to be a joke or like the buffer for their friends. Like, I have earned my place in this community, and I continue to try to make myself available to others. And like, yeah, when you say stuff like that, especially to someone like myself, who I feel like I've encountered a lot of red tape and kink, I've hit so many walls or barriers, or people who said they weren't going to work with me, weren't interested in my body type. That I never thought that I could do a pose in rope. I never thought I could fit into a certain type of latex, like whatever it may be. And for you to just say like, oh, you're so lucky, it brings back all those feelings of every time I had someone tell me I wasn't good enough, my body wasn't right, I wasn't ever going to be able to hold the pose, whatever. I will never work with that person, whatever.
That totally makes sense. And I feel like when you're like a publicly hot person who
People have a lot of opinions.
People have a lot of opinions, and like when you've had a lot of experiences in your life that made you feel insecure about your hotness, like people don't know that, like, I don't know, like, I feel like people sometimes don't believe you that you that you haven't always like been like, yeah, I'm this powerful hot bitch, you know? Like, I don't know. Am I making sense?
No,
yeah,
it does
absolutely.
make sense. It's like you, like, because of where you are right now, like, you obviously have a past. Everybody has a past, right? And like, those things, of course, are always going to like creep up and like cloud how you view certain things. And then people are like, well, no, it's like, forget about everything. And it's like, well, I've lived this entire life. Like, it's like, those are my experiences, you know?
And still encounter it today, right? Like, I have had people who, like, I know that I will never tie with certain people in the community who are very visual because I do not fit that body type. Also, I personally don't want to work with a photographer or rope top who only ties a specific body type, so I cancel out those people for me too.
I have a really hard time with photographers who only like take pictures of certain body types.
Yeah.
We know a lot of boudoir photographers who don't, or like, you know, we follow people who don't. Clearly, they only shoot one type of person, you know?
Yeah, and it's like, have you ever even tried to find someone who's like, not even plus size? It's like everyone you're shooting is literally size 0. Like, can you? I don't know. It's crazy.
And rope's the same way. Like, if I don't see a rope top, if I'm like on the internet, right, and I'm like looking at people's art, and I see a rope top or a rope bottom or a switch who is only working with thin, white, female identifying or female presenting people, and I don't see a black and brown person, I don't see a disabled person, or I don't see a fat person, like, we are not going to vibe the way that I am looking to vibe with the people that I work with. I just can tell off the bat. And like, because, and like, you know, obviously for like, for sexualized stuff, right? Like, no one has to fuck anyone they don't want to fuck. Like, who you're attracted to is who you're going to be attracted to. Granted, if you're only attracted to one demographic, you should probably do some therapy on why that is, because you're really denying yourself a lot of amazing experiences with people. But like, if you consider yourself like an instructor or like a public figure, and you're only showcasing certain body types or certain skin types, like, that's where it becomes a problem for me.
Totally, yeah, because you're like, then you're sort of like perpetuating like one specific ideal, and like, you know, you're just kind of contributing to like this narrative that everyone's always like running up against, telling us we're not fucking good enough.
100%.
Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned was that you're a retired sex worker. I definitely want to talk about the work you do with sex workers now. And I'm assuming maybe some of your past ties into why you got into that.
I just thought of I'm in Devil Wears Prada. Like, I'm on this new diet where I eat nothing, but if I feel like I'm gonna pass out, I eat a cube of cheese.
Wow,
And that line
relatable.
is like, it's so good because you're like, wait, cheese, and then one cube, and you're like, okay, I'm good. I was like, dang, dude.
I mean,
Meryl Streep would be proud.
It is my favorite movie of all time.
It's such a good movie.
It's iconic.
I saw a TikTok forever ago of this person who like got like a neon light of cerulean and it just said cerulean and they designed their whole entire living room to be a cerulean blue based off the movie. And it is, I'll have to find it and send it to you. It's so gorgeous, but it's just like this iconic room where like that movie had influenced their idea of fashion so much that they like customed a cerulean room in their house.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I'd love to shoot in there.
Yeah. I'm going to be that committed to my aesthetic.
Just get you a pink.
Yes.
I mean, you kind of
kinda
are.
guess,
Look at this room. Like,
I know, I've already thought about for the guest bedroom in my house, like taking out the closet and making it like a vanity after seeing this.
isn't this so smart?
It's so smart.
I love having that area to like sit and get ready.
Yeah. And it's so nice when we get older. I don't know. I love having an intentional space
Yes.
for me to get ready.
Yes.
Doesn't mean I'm going full glam every day, but just like whatever it may be.
It just feels better to not be like my
Rushed
shit's all
or
over the
sitting in front-
counter
yeah.
and it's
I'm
just
making
like
a mess by
different vibe.
existing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like very like, okay, I'm the like, the Devil Wears Prada, like rich lady of my dreams from when I was a little girl sort of
Fuck yeah,
vibe.
dude.
I'm all about like, what would like little Taylor be like so proud
I mean,
of
I
today?
just bought a house that has like a double pull fridge, and I have never felt wealthier in my entire life.
Yes, that is like rich
Like,
person shit.
yeah, dude.
Yes.
I was like, this is it, the French door fridge. Like, I've made it.
Yes. I feel like my thing of that is having a fridge in the garage for drinks and like frozen meat,
Yeah.
get
Yes.
a whole half a cow or something
yeah.
in there. Like,
It doesn't matter. You have a whole fridge in your garage.
put whatever
you can do
the fuck you want in there. I guess that's a freezer.
All Diet Coke and LaCroix. Just the whole thing.
Yes. But I'm not there yet, but that is, I
You're
have
getting
a
there.
goal.
You're
of
getting
having-
there. Oh, I was just saying, this is like that TikTok I had sent you where that girl, like, she was like, every day I just ask myself, like, what is the most, what would you say, like, what is the most, like, successful...
The hottest, most successful version of me do. I feel like that's very trending right
And she
now.
was like asking herself that, like every decision she was making that day, she was like, I'd ask myself, and then I would make the decision based on that answer.
yeah.
And I'm like, this is how I need to be living every day of my life.
100%.
One of her things, though, was she was like, if I have an option to drink water or vodka, obviously the hottest, most accessible version of me is going to drink vodka. And I was like, I don't know about that one, girl.
My skincare routine demands a lot of water.
Yeah.
I got a Botox lady, and she's like, you need to be drinking 48 ounces a day minimum. And I'm like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, it's just like, you don't want to be hungover the next day. You have stuff to do. You're successful.
Yeah,
You're,
Every cup of liquor you drink, you need to be drinking a cup of water. Same with coffee. Every
at
time.
least more.
Rotate.
Like, okay, sorry. Let's go back. I didn't mean
Oh,
to.
well, okay. No, this is good. I mean, the people love when we go on
We
our...
go off the cuff. Yeah.
Also, the people, I'm like really trying to figure out what the name for our listeners is. I've been obsessing about it, and I cannot figure it out.
The
like,
peaches sounds too, like...
it's too, like, I feel
It's
like...
too, yeah, it's like too obvious.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like,
But that's where my
we're
head
sort
went
of like
first.
the Naked Peaches.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the name of the podcast. So
Yeah.
it's like, what are our babies? What are our children? You know, like and some people are like the Peach Pit, and I'm like,
It's
like,
weird.
We're the pits.
yeah,
it's
it's just like not cute enough.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
doesn't work for the vibe.
Like, are they the orchard? But then that's like, that's not very sexy, you know?
It sounds very
know.
stout and resolute. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going anywhere.
Let's
Yeah.
have a brainstorming session after this. So, like,
Yes.
next week, we will commit. Next week, we will have a name.
Next week we will come to you with a name.
All right,
okay?
I'm going to put it in my
I'm committing.
calendar and send you guys a text and be like, what's the name?
Please do.
Please.
And if Coyote
Accountability
says
buddies.
she's gonna do it, she's going to.
Yes.
If I know one
I'm
thing
Polly,
about her,
I live by my calendar.
Yes.
Like, every single thing is itemized. Has to be.
yeah.
People who don't live by their calendars honestly stress me out.
Yes.
Like,
Literally, my husband. I'm like, what are
It's
you
raw
doing?
dogging through life. I
It's
can't imagine.
Psychotic. I can't.
No.
I don't remember anything.
If it's
Yeah.
not on the calendar, it doesn't exist in my week at all. Like, it will not happen.
It has to happen. Thank God for Apple Calendar all the time.
calendar, also using Notion, like that's
you need a to-do list and you need a calendar.
I also like using the reminders one because then anytime I mark something off, it goes away. Like I don't have to like it just it's gone out into the ether.
Yes.
And you can tell it to remind you stuff when you're leaving your house, which is when I forget things. It's like some stuff I need to grab when I'm leaving the house. So I use it for that. Like, remember to grab the studio laundry on your way to the studio. Like,
my roommate is also kinky and also poly, and we have shared reminders and shared calendar in the house. So I know when their partners are coming over, if they're hosting people. We like have shopping dates that we'll put on. Like anytime we want to hang out with each other, we'll look to the calendar first and just put it on the calendar, and we know that that's a commitment for both of us. It's great.
I love that.
It's so rad.
Yeah. Okay, I have a question, but it's unrelated to what we were.
No, it's fine.
It's going back to rope really quick. I don't know why I just thought of this. So, like, it's so pretty. Like, watching you guys do it was really impressive. And obviously it's a huge time commitment to learn how to do this, to be doing it regularly. Like, it's stunning. Do people do this as a performance?
Yes, 100%. There are so many really great performers all over the world who like specialize,
like it's
have
their job.
Studios where they teach rope, where that's their job. Like that is their primary source of income. It is their work. And they we have a variety of studios all over the country, but people will like create a space and like do educational classes. They'll do those intensive weekends. They will have what's called either a jam or a munch, which are the phrases used for like a get together of people to like share and collaborate with each other and like swap information and educate each other on different ties and also just meet new people in the community. And yeah, people also will charge for rope 100%. I have several friends who have like rates for like, if you're not one of my partners or not someone I consistently tie with, you are paying me for my service, just like any level of sex work.
I mean, it's smart though. It makes
Super
sense.
smart.
It's like, you're investing so much of your own time to be doing this.
SZA just did a music video last week where she was in shibari. And was doing rope art as a part of her music video. And she paid a shibari artist to fly out and come tie her and walk her through the steps of what it was going to look like. And they cultivated what they wanted the image in that scene to look like.
I love that. That's so cool.
That was really cool.
It was really dope.
Yeah.
It was like, I do that too.
Yeah. I know. I love SZA. I feel like, do people ever do it as like more of like almost like a burlesque show, like where you go and you sit in an audience and you're just watching?
I think I've been to several like art performances that will have like a living art piece of shibari. There's a couple different artists who like will like Midori or Kanaka are two big names in the scene who have like gone to art galleries and showcased their rope in
so
different
cool.
spaces. Yeah, and it's beautiful to watch that like that process for them where they've taken a like really traditional form of art and connection and expanded it into a more modernized art. And seeing their own spin on that with the origin still being like Eastern shibari, which is rad.
Yeah.
I would love to go to a show and like, you know, I mean, I feel like we got like a private show just watching.
It was I was like, we're at Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah,
like, this is insane.
I was just so surprised by how long it took to even get you in the air. You know, there's so much tying that goes into it. And it's like, before that I had just seen the photos on your Instagram or, you know, and just seeing those photos, you're like, oh, that looks so cool. But when you actually see what it takes to even get into that photo it just blew my mind.
And like, you know, it's not just like, you can't just like put a rope on someone and put them up in the air. That's so risky, right? So when, for example, like when Katie and I did rope at the studio at Naked Peach, like we had a conversation the week before about what we wanted to do. We'd actually practiced the tie to make sure my body was going to find that sustainable. They ended up tying it on another person to just test the durability and see if anything would come up with that. And we did a body check-in before we sat on the floor and talked with each other before at the studio to make sure like my body felt okay for what we had signed up for that day. There's a lot of risk in rope. You can cause severe nerve damage for someone if you put a rope over a certain body part or an area of a body part and cut off their circulation. You can hurt someone really bad by pulling that. Like I've had a shoulder get dislocated in rope before because I did a twist and someone was unprepared for a movement and my shoulder was really, really hurt. And luckily that's been the only main injury that I'd had. But like rope is super risky. You're going to get rope burn. You're going to get marks. You're going to get bruises. Like it is putting a strain on your body to be in those positions.
The nerve damage thing is really interesting. I never would have thought of that, but it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, like Because if you, I mean, like I can feel my feet going numb right now because I've been sitting like this for so
this
long.
knee really hurts right now. My jeans are cutting off the circulation. Yeah.
You know? And so same thing, like you're putting, like imagine if someone just gripped the back of your calf and like held a pressure point there. You're gonna get a Charlie horse. It's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Which,
have you
by
ever
the way,
gotten a
is the
Charlie
worst.
horse?
In rope, yeah. That is
Ouch.
just...
Do you get them all the time?
Not all the time, and that's like on me more than on anyone else. Like I'm not hydrated. I didn't eat enough protein. I didn't stretch enough. Like whatever.
You didn't have bananas.
I didn't have bananas.
Oh, you're allergic to
I'm
bananas.
allergic to bananas, so thank goodness for that one. But like yeah, and you just there's always the option in rope. Like every time, I mean, if you're tying with someone, like the hope or I mean the goal is that they have a pair of shears on them. If they don't have shears, you shouldn't be working with them. But like you know, I've never been in a position where I've need to get cut out.
Even when you dislocated your shoulder?
We didn't realize how bad it was till after.
Oh, got it. Okay.
But it was like, at that time, the top was maneuvering the rope to bring me down from a suspension point. I was in what's called like a fudo on my arms. So my arms were like this and I twisted.
Wait, will you tell them what that means? Because that's another
Yeah.
I got the feedback that we show things to each other here, but then we don't explain it.
So like
to people
fudo is
listening.
a style of wrap. It's a form, it is an actual tie of shibari and it wraps around in different points usually on the leg, but also on your arms. And I was held up like this.
Okay, so your
Like a
arms are
chicken.
up
Like a chicken. Or like a little
arms
T-Rex.
by
Yeah, so I look like
fine.
a chicken or like a T-Rex depending on where you like have my arms going.
Yeah, okay.
And my arm moved, like my body shifted, like my hips dropped down before my chest did. And it caused my hips, because they're, you know, big luscious lumps, to like move, and it yanked on my shoulder.
Ugh.
And I had to do PT for months after, wasn't doing any rope. I still will get tenderness in that area, and it's been 1.5 years.
Wow.
Did the top pay for your PT?
That is something that I get asked a lot, and no. And this is someone I have not tied with since. It was an entire accident that it happened. It was something that like at that time, like I usually am pretty in check with being able to observe what's happening to me, and like adjust or ask for adjustments. And I didn't see that one coming either. However, they had one follow-up with me after, and did not make any other effort to be of support. And so I have not tied with that person since.
Yeah.
I was offered, Natalie Rose Fett is an amazing shibari instructor and shibari artist here in Portland. And she was super helpful during that whole process and gave me tips and tricks and just a lot of emotional support. Mm-hmm. And though I did not accept, did offer as like a community member to take care of my PT for me.
That's really
Wow,
sweet.
that is really nice.
I love, if anyone in the Portland area is looking, or DC, or sorry, not DC, I'm not there yet. I was going to say Washington, I will be. Yeah. Washington or Oregon, that is definitely a really amazing queer BIPOC rope top.
Love that.
Yeah.
We're gonna have so many like resources to share in this episode. I feel like
we'll give you
like,
guys a whole big
resource
list.
queen over here. We love it.
Okay, let's go back to your question, because I just realized that we completely sidetracked from that.
Yeah. So you had mentioned that you're a retired sex worker.
Yes.
And I know that you, like, a lot of the work you do now is, like, advocacy for sex workers.
Mm-hmm.
I just would love to, like, hear more about, like, that journey and, like, what you do now. And I feel like it's just, again, it's a world that a lot of people probably make a lot of assumptions about based on things they see on social media or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, like, just having, like, an actual, like, person who's in it and, like, experienced it, like, giving us the truth, I feel like is just a cool thing to be able to share.
Yeah, and I'll be like relatively loose just because of my current job, but my employer today does know that I'm a retired sex worker, which is an immense privilege to have, to be able to work in the field I do and have that be so transparently a part of my experience. But I, in my active addiction, before I got sober, I definitely would be what's known as like a street worker. And so I utilized that in order to get my needs met with regards to funds and drugs. And I've also participated in porn. I've done model shoots as a sex worker, and I've also worked as an escort, which varies in what that level of intimacy with a person can look like. And so, yeah, that has been like a really wonderful experience. Even all the shitty times that were absolutely terrifying has really developed me into the communicator I am today. It also, sex work has really liberated my sexual identity on who I'm interested in, what I'm interested in, how I go about achieving that experience with another person or persons. and has been just like a really amazing foundation for that. I currently work as a social worker in the domestic violence and sex trafficking continuum. So I work with the state of Oregon in a variety of different ways, as well as nationally, in policy and advocacy for legislative changes for active sex workers, as well as survivors of sex trafficking who are participating in non-consent rape work. It's been really amazing to like have the experiences that I have be of use to people. For a long time of my life, I felt, especially about the experiences during my addiction or actively using, I felt a point of shame or a point of discord for myself. And I have, especially even in kink, felt just really safe to share about those things. And though I will always encounter like trolls or judgy people, they're majority of the people that I work with today or interact with today who know about that and still love me regardless.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I feel like in recovery too, like that story is like relatively common, you know? And I feel like I oftentimes hear like people, especially women who have gone through that, talking about like their past life or, you know, their experience in sex work in like a really sort of negative way where there's clearly like, you know, shame involved and like it's very tied into like, you know, I was this person and whatever. And I just feel like it's really cool to hear you talking about it as like, you know, this, it's part of your story. It's not just like this horrible thing that happened, you know, like, I think that that's really cool.
And like ownership of my own inventory, right? Like I was in my using really willing, even when like in situations that were non-consensual, right? I was willing to put myself in places of risk or harm in order to get my needs met. And I really had to process that for a number of years, that I had like willingly made choices that led me to a point, where I was open to doing things in order to get that need met. And then on the flip side of that, when I got sober and continued to do sex work because I was good at it, I knew how to do it. And it was, especially working in a dungeon for several years, like it was an option for me to be able to service clients in a different way. Like it was empowering. It was revitalizing. Like I was not less than, I was not a piece of meat. I was not someone who was like, my relationships could still be transactional, but be intentional. And that was really powerful for me. And today, like for someone who presents the way I do, right? Like someone who, I have a face tattoo, I have a hand tattoo, I am openly in kink. My job is aware that I do kink, and that I am a past sex worker. To be able to walk into the spaces that I do and still have my body autonomy, my respect from those around me, and like an educational background. And I'm not talking like a degree, I'm talking just like the education of my life experience. To be able to be heard by people is so fucking cool. Like I just bought a house and I did that on the money that I earned from using my experience as sex work to help other people. And that's fucking cool.
That's so cool. Yeah. That's incredible. And like, I don't know, like you hear like policy, I work with policymakers and I think Leslie Knope, you know, like
I would die to be Leslie Knope.
I mean, I fucking love Leslie Knope, but like, you know,
the dream,
like has never
her binder organization
like broken a rule.
Yes.
You know, and so like to see someone who's like badass and tattooed and has this like life experience, like I don't know, it's just really cool because I feel like a lot of us have this idea that like, well, that's for people who like have never broken a law, have never told a lie, you know? And I think the best people who are advocating in our country are the ones who've had the experience or who really step back, use their resources and their influence to allow people into a space, and then they step back for others to take it. And that's just really powerful. Like I work with a variety of different survivors from both DV, sex trafficking, and active sex workers. And my job is to get them in a place where they feel safe and they feel heard and respected because they are entitled and deserve that, the same as any other person. And then I step out of the way for them to have their voice. It is not my job to speak for a survivor. And I, you know, have been out of the game for a couple years. And so like letting them lead the show and facilitate their experience is entirely what I'm there for. It's not, if I were to overshadow in any way, it would be diminishing of what their needs are. Can you tell us about the job that you applied for, that you know, like what you're going to be doing when you move?
Yeah. Okay. So I won't, like, without saying the agency, but like there are some victim advocate roles that are opening in Virginia, which is historically an extremely red state. I mean, they have a red governor right now, and is not sex worker friendly. Like, we are very blessed in Oregon to have a more or I guess I should say just Portland, because we're such a blue bubble here. Yes. But like, we have a very forward thinking, like, sex positive community that, like, whether it's like just for show or even on paper, like, people are advocating for sex worker rights in Oregon. Virginia does not have that. However, they have applied for and been granted a grant for victim advocates to work with legislators, with attorney general's offices, with state and federal offices that are based in Virginia directly into DC. And so I am hoping to join one of the teams that will be working with Virginia state legislators to shift the way of thinking that they've historically had regarding sex workers and survivors.
That's so cool.
Yeah, this is so amazing.
I love that. I follow, I mean, I'm sure all of us probably do, stripper writer on Instagram. And recently she posted about one of those like sex trafficking busts, and explained that like a lot of those like busts that you see where it's like, we busted a sex trafficking ring. Yeah. It's literally just like the thing where like cops will pretend to be like
a John,
and they're just like arresting sex workers.
Yeah.
And I was fucking blown away by that, because I feel like people hear sex trafficking and they're immediately like, yes, put them in jail. Like, this is something.
But what they don't realize is when they go and do these stings, they're arresting everybody. It's advocates who show up on site. There are a bunch of different, especially in Oregon, it's a bunch of different advocate groups who try to intercept in order to get sex workers not seen as, I mean, because they're survivors in that experience, right? Yeah. Like, you are trafficked for a reason. You are not consensually engaging in sex work with another human. You are being forced to engage in non-consensual experiences with people. And yet, you know, you're on the street corner and you're the one who gets picked up and your pimp's not.
Yeah, it's so fucked up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, in your experience, do you think it's a lot of sex trafficking is actually just consensual sex work that we see like being reported on or whatever?
I think that it varies. I think that trafficking has a pretty wide umbrella of what that looks like. And people, when they think trafficking, right, they think of like just to give like a pretty specific scope, like they think of like a child or a woman from a foreign country being brought legally over state lines and sold for sex. But trafficking is a lot larger than that. It includes like forced labor. It includes like utilizing people for services and goods. It includes like holding people emotionally, physically, and financially hostage in order to like exploit them for things. And with sex work specifically, there are consensual sex workers who want to be out working, who have collectives of group of people that are like, with the generational historical experience that they have, like that's the best option for them. That is it is the oldest profession in the world for a reason. Like, pussy is going to fucking sell. And that's a way where if like you can't eat, you have children, you have bills, like you can make a couple quick easy bucks doing it. But that also is like reflective of like the bigger issue of like, why are people put in a position where they need to do sex work forcibly? And then there's also just consensual sex work where people are like have experience and can provide comfort and provide care in ways where like other people maybe could not access it if they weren't given the opportunity to pay for it. It should be a business where if someone wants to be in that field, they should be allowed to do so. There are a variety of different therapeutic necessities that come with sex work, right? Like, people are given connection. They're given the opportunity to process emotions. It's not always just about physical touch, but if it is, some people don't have access to physical touch or don't have the time, space, mental capacity. They have disabilities. They have mental health issues that prevent them from exploring their own interpersonal relationships. And by being allowed to access services from a professional sex worker is a clean, cut, dry, transactional relationship where they are being provided a good and service.
It's wild to me that it's still not legal basically anywhere except Las Vegas.
Yeah, right outside of Las Vegas.
Yeah, just because it's like you said, it's literally the world's oldest profession.
Yeah.
It is not going anywhere, ever. Like, why are we still...
And it happens everywhere.
Yes.
And by criminalizing it, you're creating more fields of access for people to be harmed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like...
You're making it less safe.
Yeah. If people who were being trafficked could go to the cops for help and not be worried about being arrested themselves, then, like, you know,
If a consensual sex worker, right, had the opportunity to approach support services in the community if they were harmed or needed additional resources, they would be a lot more successful in their work.
Yeah.
And like, you know, this is why we have advocates who work really, really hard in order to make sure that they are being the buffer between legal systems navigation and the resources that sex workers deserve.
Okay, here's a question, and you can tell me if you can't answer this one too. But like you said, it's a really red state. It's like there's no real resources at all. I guess is like our initial steps just to like start to provide, I guess, obviously I'm assuming like legalizing it isn't like the first step you guys are working on, right? But just like providing some level of like basic care to people or, you know,
I mean, there are advocacy, like nonprofit and grassroots supports in Virginia, but there's not legislative policy or state backing the way that it should. And so part of what I want to help work on is grants for nonprofits and grassroots collectives that are really doing the work as direct service providers with survivors, with sex workers, in order to afford them the opportunity to continue to do so, right?
Yeah.
They are underfunded, overworked, and understaffed. And like by giving them more money in a capitalistic society, they'll be able to hire more, they'll be able to do more trainings, they'll have more access to resources and provisions to provide their clients. And that's super important. We don't need a bunch of, I don't want to ever put into law or into the ether of law creating for more policy that encourages police activism or like legal representation, like influence in sex work. What I want is for sex workers to be able to ask for something and get support with it.
How revolutionary.
yeah.
Who would think?
It's like fucked up that that's so like, it's so basic, but
hard.
it's not, like,
Because the majority, I would say, you know, 99.9% of the world hears that anyone sells their body to another person's and thinks that they're less than.
yeah.
Or thinks that they are forced into it against their will.
I mean, I feel like even with like, people will like look at other people's boudoir photos, you know, and they're like, that's like so bad, or like, I can't believe you guys are doing that, or I can't, you know, it's just like, there's like really like, I don't know, it's crazy. And then I love what we do, obviously, and I think it's amazing. I think it's empowering. I think all these, and like there are some people that are very anti what we do out there.
100%.
Like very, very anti.
The church groups probably have a wonderful time on your page. You know, how can we help all of these girls that clearly Taylor and Anna have trafficked into this boudoir studio?
Yeah.
They're the ones who get us shadow banned. I think Anna, you are shadow banned, by the way. I've been trying
I
to
had to
search
type your
you.
name in fully in order to find you for a message I sent earlier.
Awesome.
And like you were like
I'm
my
always shadow banned.
I'm sure,
Yeah, we're all shadow banned.
Eventually.
It's
Well, you
fine.
had your account deleted.
Yeah. That was directly resulting of someone though. I had made a conscious decision to support someone in the kink community in restoratively working on behaviors that they had done where they had harmed women in the community. And I made a conscious decision to be a part of their accountability pod to help them through that. And a lot of people did not like that.
But if there's anybody who could be kind of a resource for someone
I would
trying
hope
to do that, you'd think it'd be you, right?
That was my thinking.
Yeah.
This was someone I had a relationship with. It was a rope top that I was sleeping with. We'd only seen each other about 4 or 5 times. But we had a lot of pictures on the internet together, so everyone was very aware that we were hanging out with one another. And they got called out, understandably so, for a variety of different behaviors with other partners. I did not experience that, but that doesn't take away from the experience of others. And we stopped seeing each other romantically, but I agreed to be a part of their community actives that were working with them to have them stop tying, take different educational steps, no new partners, etc., whatever it may have been. And there was a lot of people that felt especially because I'm a woman, that I was co-signing the behavior of an abuser. And unfortunately, that caused like a lot of backlash, right? Like this was the first time in kink for over a decade where I felt like I was like at risk of like canceling or being seen as like an abuse co-signer or whatever it may have been. And it was the first time I'd ever felt that. And especially given what I do professionally, like I was so wounded and my ego got really hurt and like talk about humble pie. I mean, for sure. And it's been a year of like really rebuilding that image that the internet has made of me. And also a really great year of having amazing fucking friends who know who I am as a person. I'm not always the most open specifically about who I work with professionally versus in my kink life. And because of the threat of like one day maybe this will affect a job that I want to go for, or like, you know, someone's opinion of me when I need to do something for work, I didn't feel like the community rallied for the support of what we preach about a lot, restorative justice, like offering people spaces to change. And whether or not that person deserves to change is neither here nor there, right? You know, like I'm not the one to be able to decide that, but someone asked me for help and I gave them my best shot in being able to do it. Mm-hmm. But I also, with that conscious decision that I stand by and would do for another person if they ask, like comes a lot of like outside perception on whether or not that's the right thing to do for someone.
I feel like this sort of ties into some of the things we talked about with Mary on her episode, because she talked a lot about like, you know, kind of having like had these experiences where she had family members who had like done really bad things, and you know, kind of like coming to terms with that, and like I can't like tie it into a thread.
Well, she did talk a lot about like holding space for people that other people wouldn't normally hold space for, and like talking to them about the demons they were battling, basically, and like not immediately shutting down a conversation just because it's like this person's a weirdo or something. Which was I feel like
there's not a lot of give for that in our society today, especially like within like our generation and like our progressive like ways of thinking, right? And I struggle with that. Obviously, I want there to be safe spaces. I want there to be the opportunity for people to like be able to dictate their boundaries in a space. But I also know that almost 13 years ago, if no one in AA had helped me when I was an absolute piece of shit, I would not be here today. And I've sat in a room with the worst addicts on the world, murderers, abusers, embezzlers, whatever it may be, people who just totally wreak havoc. And I've seen them change. And so it's hard for me, and like, you know, boundaries to have and like work-life balance, etc. But it's hard for me when someone has hurt other people and says that they're willing to change, to not give them that opportunity. And what they do with that is totally their business, right? We can always extend the hand, and we can't, you know, answer if someone's going to take it or not. But after being sober for so long and after working in the field that I have, like, it's important to me to not give up hope that people have the opportunity to change.
I think that's a really good perspective, because there are a lot of people who will go into heavier fields like social work, for instance, but they just end up getting so like burdened by their work and so burnt out that they do have that like really negative view on everything towards the end, or, you know, so many fields, not just social work. But I'm glad that you have that perspective. I mean, I'm
trying to keep it. I just feel like I'm constantly motivated by others in my field. I'm constantly motivated by the collective work that's being done with sex workers and advocating on their behalf. I want there to be change for us, and that won't happen if everyone still saw me as like the street worker who like took $50 for whatever. Like I would never have been given any opportunity. But I've changed who I am. I've developed different skills. I've learned how to communicate, own my behaviors, process with other people, and lean on others for support. And the only reason I had that opportunity is because when I was an absolute garbage can, people tried to help me.
Yeah, I think that like we're so not lucky, but I mean, I think I am so grateful that like the rooms of 12-step meetings are there and provide what they provide, because there's not a lot of places that have that kind of like open arms, like, you know, as long as you want to stop drinking, you're welcome here, and like nothing else matters. And I do think that it's like it does allow you to kind of keep this perspective a little bit of like people can change, people can grow, because we've seen it, and like you don't always, you know, get to see that if you're not in a space like that.
And like sometimes we're wrong, right? Like how many times have we reached out to an addict or alcoholic, or I, you know, was trying to help this person this last year and like did my best and like wasn't able to like get the goals or responses that I would have necessarily liked, but like but it doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying, because then I deny someone else the opportunity to get help, and me the opportunity to be of service, which is very important to me. Like my kink is helping my community, you know, and I don't ever want to get to the point where I'm jaded, where I don't want to help someone out when they ask.
Yeah. Well, okay, on that note, are there like resources that you would recommend for people based on some of the things we've talked about today, or do you want to like send us a list that we can put in like the podcast description or something? Because
I'd love to send a list.
Do you want to end with obsessions?
Oh my
gosh. Did you think of any?
No, you guys go first. I'm going to think. Okay,
you think.
Okay, I will go first with my obsession.
Okay.
But let me tell you, I was nervous to share this obsession today because I found a podcast that I fucking love, and I was like, do I want to gatekeep this because they are funnier than us? And what if our listeners leave us for this new podcast? So
no.
if you guys
That's me with
different.
my poly partners whenever I introduce them to someone new. I'm like, what if they leave me for them?
Yeah, I just have to have faith that like the right people will stay with us.
The right
you know?
people will
the
stay.
right audience.
There's
will...
enough room for all of us to be funny and
exactly.
good, you
I
know.
need to listen to things.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and this podcast has been around for a long time, and one of my besties just introduced me to it the other day. It's called Los Culturistas.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
Have you listened to it?
I've listened to a couple episodes.
I have not.
They're so fucking funny. It's Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang are
He's the one from
hosts.
SNL.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bowen Yang is from SNL.
Yeah.
They did that movie Fire Island, which I actually haven't seen, but
it's
now I'm like, I
so
need to.
funny.
Yeah.
It's
It is
so
dumpster
funny.
fire in slow motion. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
After listening to them on this podcast, I'm like, immediately I need to watch this movie
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I know it's going to be fucking incredible. I was laughing out loud, like washing the dishes, and like, I just like.
Which is the best way that anyone should do the dishes.
Yes. I'm just like obsessed. There's so many episodes, so I'm just like getting into this universe. Like, it's, you know, when you just find a new thing to be like,
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with this,
Yeah.
and like, yeah. So that's my obsession. I fucking love them. The episode they did with the two actresses from what's the name of the show? Sex Lives of College Girls.
Yeah.
Was so funny. It was
so
such a good
good.
episode.
Okay,
so,
I'll go listen to that one.
Yeah.
That was a great show.
But don't stop listening to us just because you start listening to them.
No.
So I've never been a Pinterest girly. I like missed the boat. I feel like it came out when I was in boarding school because I went to boarding school for high school. And I just like have since then just never hit the mark with it. And I just bought a house. It's my first house. I'm super excited. I get to like make it my own in a way that like you can't do in rentals. And I'm obsessed with wallpapers. Like I cannot stop. I've got a Pinterest account. I'm compiling all my pins and like making my boards. And I've got a different board for each room of like what wallpaper design I want to put of like different archways and like cuts and like crazy prints with different colors that I normally would not do. After being at Naked Peach, I also have a bathroom that I want to be pink,
Yes,
which is going to
yes.
be wild. But everything I keep coming back to has like pink notes in it. And I'm like, crap, Taylor has influenced me.
Wow.
The
influence
It'll be the
of
Taylor
Naked
bathroom.
Peach.
I
Yeah.
love that.
I'll get like a Naked Peach sign in
Oh my
or
god.
something.
Adorable.
Maybe that's where I'll put all my prints for my gallery wall.
Yes.
Yes.
Ooh, good idea.
In the
Okay, but
bathroom.
yeah, I can't stop looking at wallpapers at like
love
2 in the
those.
morning. And whenever I get stressed to decompress right in the last week, I've just been like looking at wallpapers.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cute.
Okay, in the pink bathroom, are you gonna do like? Are you gonna really full send like pink tub,
Well,
pink shower, like all of that?
I looked at a pink bathtub because I'm redoing the bathroom and I'm going to put like an egg tub in it. But like I found one that's like a pink crystal bathtub, but I don't have $6,000 to spend on that shit. Like I'm a social worker. Like I got no dollars in the bank. And so, but the hard part with pink that I'm finding is a lot of stuff is pink and gold and I'm a silver bitch.
Got it.
And so finding like pink, like I think I'm going to have to go with like more of like a richer fuchsia color versus like light baby pink because
Okay.
that's I think the only way that it'll really link well.
Okay,
But we'll
That's
see.
like-
Who could say?
Fuchsia is like a vibe of its own.
It is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't know. I like the deep and richness of it and like the depth that comes from that color. So I
Yes.
feel like I can probably do something cool with there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm literally inviting myself to come to your house and shoot you in your
Anytime.
bathroom.
I mean, and the next like 6 months, I won't have that much furniture, so it'll be a perfect shooting space with all the open
great
light. There's
point.
windows for days.
say less.
I love that. We're gonna plan a trip right after this. is
Fuck
done.
yeah.
We've already been talking about how we need to do another shoot before
Yeah.
Coyote moves away. Like
Yeah.
something to
My
do with
send-off.
water.
Yeah.
Yes. So hopefully.
I want to do a water shoot.
Well, my obsession is my new shirt that I'm wearing now. So this is Taylor on
is
my
it
shirt.
Taylor?
Yeah, it's this stunning photo of Taylor that I took during our up close shoot that we did back in November, and then I got this shirt finally this last week. So
Hell yeah.
it's my first time wearing it. I love it. I literally put it on today, and I was like, this is like art. Like this looks
Yeah.
like a fancy ass brand with like some
Just put
really
Supreme
dope.
at the top.
I know.
Yeah,
It's like she
100%.
looks like a statue. She's so gorgeous, and I was really excited to wear this.
Hell
today,
yeah.
I'm
so,
flattered. I'm
yeah.
honored. But also, like, how cool that you are having something that you took on a piece
Yeah.
of, like,
That's
that you get to
awesome.
look at that and be like, I took that.
I know.
Yeah.
It makes me want
What's
to.
the designer? Me.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I want to just have a bunch of T-shirts where they're all just my art, and I just wear them all
Yeah.
the time. And
Yeah.
like, if
Heck yeah.
Instagram's gonna shout out me, might as well represent
Yeah,
my
just
own
fucking
work in
do
the
it,
world,
you
you know. So,
Yes, 100%.
Perpetually shadow band. We'll be there together.
all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been an amazing episode. Your
Thank you
story
so
is
much.
wonderful. I feel like the people are really going to appreciate this.
Yes, the people
The
who will have a
people.
new name next week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just wait.
I'll put it in my calendar. Text you guys 9 a.m. next Monday. What's the name, guys?
We're obsessed with you. It was so much
Yeah,
fun to
it's
have you
cool.
here.
Thanks for inviting me. This
Yeah.
was super fun.
Thanks for making time in your busy ass schedule.
I know, I'm about to leave to go to crisis shelters.
Okay,
You're amazing.
really quick before you go off on your next agenda
Whatever.
item.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online?
My Instagram is actually Coyote, which is the best way to do it. I don't use FetLife, which is a common kink space platform website, because a lot of my clients and survivors that I work with who are still actively working in sex work use that to use John. So in case anyone is like, where can I find them on FetLife? You can't. So Instagram is the best way, and it's actually Coyote.
And type the whole thing out.
Type the whole thing out.
Otherwise you're not
The
going to
best way you got. Or
Yes.
just go to the naked peach phase, and I'm the one with the tattooed ass.
Yes. You'll see her glorious photos.
Yeah, so many.
Yes, some really good ones to come. And you can find us at Naked Peach Boudoir. Type in the whole fucking thing or nakedpeachboudoir.com. And I'm T Smells with a Z.
And I'm Anna McLaughlin Photo, whole thing.
And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.